Welcome to the next webinar of TiE Mumbai. We have a beautiful one. In fact, today we are launching what we're calling it as the Startup to Startup Connect series between India and Israel. And I will be welcoming my partner in crime, if I have to say, Sagi Aicher, who is the head of economic and trade mission. So Sagi, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome the whole audience. Over to you, Sagi.
Okay, thank you, Naveen. Thank you very much. I wanted to use this opportunity to say, first of all, thank you, TiE Mumbai, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. Gurilani and Assaf Barnea from Israel, which represent what they're doing and how Israeli healthcare and Israeli innovation can actually, and hopefully will affect the world positively in the next coming years. Thank you very much, Mr. Amit Mukim, President of TiE Mumbai, for joining us on this event. Appreciate that. And also for Rajneesh, which will present the Indian startup he's heading. I would also like to make a very special thank you to Ms. Yogita Kale, working with me, the Israeli trade mission, economic trade mission to Mumbai, for facilitating and helping this event come through. So, as I mentioned, we brought few experts to talk about healthcare. I would not be talking about healthcare, or almost not talking. I would just be talking about us, who we are and what we do. So, my name is Sagi Aicher. I'm the head of the economic and trade mission of Israel to Mumbai, part of the Israeli government. As the economic council to Mumbai, India, what we're trying to do, me together with my teammates and my staff, we're trying to increase bilateral trade. We're trying to allow businesses from both sides, Indian and Israelis, to work together, to collaborate, attract investments from India to Israel, which we'll talk about in a second, and basically getting people to get to know each other, do the matchmaking, and collaborate in various things business related, trying to create a win-win situation and to get all sides from to benefit from the collaborations. If you're aware of the DGFT under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry in India, we're doing something very similar to them under the Ministry of Economy and Industry in Israel. We're spread all around the globe, okay, 45 missions from Seton to San Francisco. Me and all my colleagues all over the planet will be more than happy to help you engage with Israeli companies, with the Israeli market. Everything that we do today, everything that we will be providing you in the future will be 100% free of cost. We take no money, no equity, no royalties, no commissions, okay? So all our services are 100% free. You're more than welcome to talk to us, get to know us, and just, you know, get us to help you. What can we provide you if we are an Indian entity? We do scouting of Israeli tech, of Israeli companies for you. You can tell us what you're interested in Israel, in the Israeli healthcare sector, and we can help you find out the right companies. There's many of them. So scouting will be needed if you're targeting the Israeli market. Introduce you to the companies, get you the matchmaking. We can provide you some overviews over verticals or the entire sector, the entire industry. Hopefully the more normal days that we'll be having, just like we had before COVID-19, we have delegations going to Israel, coming to India. So it's like people meeting people physically like we used to do before COVID, if you can remember that. All the B2B meetings. We're also helping investors that would like to invest in Israel, in Israeli companies, helping them in that process. I will just mention, again, I said I will barely speak about healthcare, but I have to mention like few really short points. Israeli healthcare sector, as a sector, all the companies combined together managed to raise roughly $700 million throughout 2019, last year, in terms of investment. Almost all of it, foreign investors came in Israel, put their money into Israel, into Israeli companies. Israel is a very good destination for investors. There's a lot of confidence for most of the investors. As of now, I guess I could say we don't see enough investments coming from India to Israel, and we would like to change that very much. I think the health sector, with everything that's going on in the world these days, would be a very good place to start in. Israel economy is a strong economy, a functioning, a very good one. We were ranked number 30 worldwide last year in terms of GDP per capita. We're part of the WTO, we're part of the OECD country. Israel is very small. I don't know if you've ever been to Israel or even saw Israel. Israel is the size of the state of Odisha, I'm pronouncing it right, in northwestern India. And in population, we're the size of the city of Bangalore. So it's a 9 million people country at the heart of the Middle East, very small country that's trying to do a lot of noise and make a lot of buzzes in various sectors and throughout the various companies. So again, very good destination to invest in. Us, the Israeli mission to Mumbai, will be more than happy to facilitate everything you will need from us in terms of getting in touch with Israeli companies, Israeli startups, Israeli entrepreneurs, Israeli innovative companies, mainly for the healthcare sector, but also if you're looking into other sectors, cybersecurity, fintech, water, agriculture, and others, we will do that as well. I'll just mention briefly that we have two more colleagues, one based in Delhi and one based in Bangalore, South India. So if you're joining us from one of those locations outside of Mumbai, outside of the western parts of India, you're more than welcome to approach our people at the Israeli consulate, either in Bangalore or the embassy in Delhi, and they will provide you same services as we will here. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us. And Naveen, the mic back to you. Thank you very much for this opportunity and for taking this event forward.
Thank you, Sagi. Welcome. And folks, now we're coming back to the main part of the program, which is where I'm going to be introducing to you Amit Mukim. Amit, as you all know, has become the president of Time Mumbai. And I think this is Amit's first event as the president of Time Mumbai. So Amit, happy to have you here. And just to kind of give you all a flavor of what the agenda looks like, Amit is going to be setting the context, giving his opinion, and then we're going to be having a quick keynote address from Assaf. He is the venture capital guru of Israel, if I have to call it that way. And then we're going to be having two startups, one from India and one from Israel, talk their perspectives. And Amit is going to be doing a quick panel discussion, and we've got tons of questions from all of you, even before the session started. And Amit is going to be kind of prodding all the three specialists and asking them. And folks, remember that today is just a knowledge series. Exactly in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be having a list of startups coming from Israel. And that is going to be the matchmaking session where they are looking at Indian partners, or either way, if you guys are looking at partners in Israel for various reasons, please sign up for that. And that is not going to be an event per se. That's just going to be a pure play matchmaking. We will have multiple meeting rooms in Zoom, and we will give you time slots where these one-on-one connects can happen. So with no further ado, Amit Mukim, over to you. And folks, he's going to be anchoring the entire day here on. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you, Naveen, and very good afternoon, good evening to all my friends, and warm welcome to our friends from Israel. Thank you for being part of this session. As Sagi was mentioning, I think for us, this is the start of a series of interactions between the companies, investors, as well as trade opportunities between Israel and India. And we have chosen a few sectors that we think could mutually benefit from this conversation, either from a point of view of finding opportunities in either country, finding investors, co-founders, partners, as well as go-to-market platforms that could come as relevant and complement what your business is. Healthcare is one of them, and of course, we will have a few more, like in the likes of agri-tech and others that we will carry on. I also want to share that a few weeks ago, and this is obviously a build-up of several years of the interaction between Israel and India. A few weeks ago, the two governments have also signed an MOU to share much more knowledge as well as trade, especially in the area of healthcare and life sciences. And I have to also point out that, for me, interaction with Israel has not been new. I have been a frequent visitor to Israel. I am fascinated by the level of innovation as well as the aggression and speed at which products are developed, not only for the local markets, but for the global markets. And that's really been the focus. And the quality of the innovation and the relevance of innovation, I think, is applicable to our country as well. As we speak, in fact, I myself have been in conversation with half a dozen Israeli startups to see how we could open up doors for them in India, because some of the things that they've been doing, especially on the digital health side, are very, very relevant to actually partner with or even come themselves, right? Let me start with, giving you a background, and many of y'all are, I can see many of y'all in the crowd And in the audience, y'all are healthcare entrepreneurs. I can see a few advisors, a few angel investors and VCs. And many of y'all may know what it is about, but for the benefit of my friends from Israel, I think I have to tell you that the last 6 to 8 months have actually brought healthcare and health tech in one of the top agendas for both entrepreneurs, corporates, and investors in India, alongside fintech, core tech, deep tech, and some of these other segments. Healthcare would be a little lower down the priority list. But I think the acceleration has happened because of two reasons. One is all the technology uplift that has taken place given the pandemic, where we saw close to 15 to 18% of HCPs, doctors, turning to digital platforms to interact with patients. We saw one of the longest duration lockdowns in the world, where close to 100 days of lockdown took place, which completely disrupted the supply chain. And the supply chain players realized that they were not digitally connected to be able to surmount this issue. We saw a threefold increase in e-commerce, especially on the e-pharmacy side. And we saw a lot more digital intervention as far as disease management, especially chronic disease management was concerned, because it is not an unknown fact that people started becoming a lot more aware of their health, especially given the effect of the pandemic on chronic conditions. So it's almost been an acceleration. And in the last 5 to 6 months, I have come across a significant number of healthcare, digital health companies, both Indian, but also you have to understand there are a lot of global companies, not only from Israel, but from Europe and from the Americas and the likes of Singapore, etc., who are now looking to come to India, given just the size of the Indian market. So that's number one. I think number two is the two things that have set the base, I feel, for digital health in India are, one is just the sheer number of data phones that Indians have. And the second is the boom in the digital wallet that took place because of demonetization a few years ago, right? And I think that sets the stage for a person who has money and a person who has access to accessing services on the digital side actually has expanded the customer base or the patient base for healthcare by almost 8 to 10 times than what it was before. So that's really the second piece. And I'm very optimistic that this will actually pave the way for the next 4 to 5 years for Indian digital healthcare to develop and for global companies to come to India. I also think that, if I look at the Indian marketplace for healthcare startups, apart from maybe one or two, I do not see healthcare unicorns at all, right? And that to me is also an opportunity for people to come up and scale businesses, not only for India, but for beyond India. And lastly, the government has announced on the 15th of August, the National Digital Health Mission. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but do read it, especially if you are looking at building a business in digital healthcare. Because what is going to happen is across 3 or 4 areas, which is electronic health records, across patient and facility registries, teleconsultation and e-pharmacy and a connected ecosystem, there is going to be a federated architecture that will invite both public and private players to play a part in the National Digital Health Mission, which was not till now a place. And India, you have to note that India is going to forever be a market which will coexist between public and private healthcare, right? So to me, there is a massive opportunity that has opened up for digital health companies to actually throw their hat in being a part of also servicing low cost and rural markets, as well as accessing higher income private markets. So the stage is set, folks. I think the 2-3 things I also want to share is, to me, the healthcare ecosystem has matured from the last 3 or 4 years. It's no longer about creating marketplaces or information portals. I think those days have gone. I think the days now are becoming much more focused and finding the niches and customer segments, and also looking at, the 3 things I always call about, which I call the ICU. Unfortunately, it meets the healthcare acronym of interoperability, content, and user experience, right? And I would say interoperability in healthcare is so important because you're going to cater to 31 countries within India and not one country, given language considerations, income considerations, and cultural considerations. So you have to have what it is that is interoperable between public, private, and to cater to many of these things. And also content. And the last point where I think we need to really move our ante up is the user experience. And there, especially folks from India, I think there's a lot of learning we can draw from our global colleagues on how some of the user experience and the user interfaces work. The last point I want to mention on the digital health piece is I think there is a massive opportunity, and especially to learn from our colleagues from Israel on analytics, on AI and data, on how some of the real world analytics can be done on specific therapy areas to really drive healthcare forward, right? And I would say as IQVIA, we've been doing this globally as well across the world. And I see a huge potential of this becoming an opportunity in India as we go forward. And the core parts of the supply chain, as well as the clinic, which is getting digitized, the patient that has access to digital information, and the public health system, which is going to invest billions of dollars over the next few years in actually digitizing the whole healthcare highway. So to me, I think, we've got a very interesting mix today. We've got Assaf. Assaf is a very prolific investor. He's been a leader in a very large corporate. He's been part of the Tech Emerge program, which brought in a lot of startups to India along with the World Bank. And Assaf is no stranger to the Indian market. And Assaf, after me, will share his views really from both sides of the story. But we also have two other entrepreneurs. And we carefully selected one entrepreneur from Israel and one entrepreneur from India so that we could hear both sides of the story and their own journeys. And then what I'd really like is to make this a very interactive session, folks. I know we've got the limitations of a virtual room, but do post your questions in the chat. I've got almost 75 questions already, so I will ask some of those along with my questions. But do post questions so that it becomes a meaningful session for you. So with that, I will pause and I will welcome Assaf to take over and really share with you his views on what he thinks is the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Amit. More than happy to attend this. To some extent, is closing the loop and opening up a new loop of collaboration with India and Indian companies. I'd like to share a presentation, just making sure that everybody can see. Is it okay now? Can you see the presentation on a slide mode? Okay.
No, Assaf, you come to the other.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now. Good to go.
Okay. So first of all, just my role, I'm the CEO of Sanara Ventures. I shall share with you one or two slides about Sanara, but I'm also the chairman of the Life Science Board in the Israeli Export Institute. And I'm also helping, as Amit indicated, the World Bank as a consultant. So just a few words of the day-to-day position that I'm running. It's a kind of a VC, a corporate VC under Teva Pharmaceutical, which is the largest generic pharma company worldwide, and under Phillips. And we invest in early stage in seed and A rounds companies, mostly in digital health and medical devices, with an AI, also in what we define as bioconvergence. This is today portfolio of Sanara Ventures. I shall share with you 2 or 3 companies, some of which are telemedicine and some of which are AI, just to get a taste, and also an overview of some of the best companies, or some of the best companies in Israel. We are now also in the process of setting up the follow-up fund of Sanara Capital, so we are now fundraising and talking to various LPs. But let's dive into the current status, and this is redundant. I mean, the need to explain what the world has been going through. Definitely, when we look into innovation, which is related to COVID-19 in healthcare or not, one thing that drives the innovation in Israel for so many years, I think, was quoted by our former president, Mr. Shimon Peres, that says that the Jews' greatest contribution to history is dissatisfaction. We are a nation born to be discontented. Whatever exists, we believe can be changed for the better. I think that is very important. This is one of the things that creates the engine behind the Israeli entrepreneurship, which is known worldwide. And just to give you a taste of why Israel is known worldwide, Waze was invented in Israel. Almost everywhere that I travel, everybody's using Waze for navigation. Mobileye, which was bought, Waze was bought by Google for $1 billion. Mobileye advanced driver assistance system was bought by Intel for $15 billion. The memory disk, the chip that we all been using for storage our files, was actually created in Israel. The disk on key as we use it, and so many others. Also, Mazor Robotics and other companies, which is a back surgery company that was sold for $1.6 billion. So innovation out of Israel, and not just necessarily in healthcare, is very, very known. And even if we look also to the global impact of Israeli companies, this is a quotation that was taken by one of the papers just, I don't know, last year, about the New York area and the New York state, that Israeli companies has boosted New York's economy by nearly $34 billion. These are companies that have relocated to New York, has basically Israeli entrepreneurs that came to them and kind of grew up to be significant companies in New York, just within New York State. This is why the reason for seeing so many global corporates that have come to Israel. You can see the slide here running from Google and Microsoft and Medtronic and GE and GM and Facebook, all of which have opened up accelerators, incubators, R&D centers, and others. And if we dive into healthcare, we have over 50 multinationals in Israel. You can obviously recognize Takeda from Japan, Novartis, Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson, Boston Scientific, all of which are playing in the Israeli scene and tapping into the Israeli innovation. If we look into the healthcare ecosystem, we have a very advanced, with a lot of failures, by the way, but still quite an advanced chains of hospitals and public community HMOs and providers in the healthcare, one of which was known to be one of the largest actually in Israel and one of the largest in the Middle East, the Tel Aviv Hospital, which was recognized as among the top 10 best hospitals worldwide. And in terms of the community, the service to the community, we have 4 major HMOs, Leumit, Clalit, Maccabi, and the Mouchedet, which are all of which serving the 9 million people. All of us, we have under the law, we have to belong at least to one of those. We can move, but we have to be in a certain period of time, belong to those HMOs and get the community services out of those HMOs unless you need to go to the hospital. In terms of the expenditures, as opposed to the US, our expenditure for health expenditure globally for so many decades has been known to be between 7 to 8%. And this is definitely something that needs to be improved. It's not like in the US that it's almost 19% of the global GDP, which is quite crazy. But in Israel, it's quite solid. Nonetheless, there are many stagnations, many bureaucracy, which definitely needs to be approved and improved by the government and by the providers. So, I mean, now talking about the global healthcare challenges will be redundant because of the COVID-19, but definitely this is why we have seen the last 2-3 years a call for action on behalf of the government, and the decision of our government actually 2 years ago to prioritize digital health as the next revenue generator from Israel, and to move from knowing to be the startup nation also to become a digital health nation. And I would like to share with you some of the companies that are doing so. First of all, one of the very early companies that was sold and was bought by Allscripts for almost $250 million. On the top left side of this slide is DB Motion. DB Motion was an Israeli startup, as I said, that was acquired by Allscripts, that actually connected the healthcare ecosystem for the very first time between the hospitals, an IT solution that connected and shared the information between the hospitals. Later on, we've been seeing operation from the General Sick Fund, the Clalit Sick Fund, the Maccabi Sick Fund with 2.2 million patients, providing centers for managing chronic diseases, and some attempts which were created a few years ago that have started collaboration between the HMOs in Israel and startup companies such as Zebra, such as Medial Early Sign, for various screening options of the population in Israel. knowing that, and as I said before, the government decided to take that and to build a more holistic ecosystem that will be able to support those startup companies. And as such, there were $300 million that were injected by the government in order to validate technologies that go to hospitals in Israel and to give them an accelerated path, if you will, to move further and faster to commercialization, to global commercialization, with those validations in hospitals, with those validation and piloting of those technologies, and obviously opening up the more open innovation ecosystem as much as possible in order to allow the acceleration of commercialization. Some of the things that we also did is to attend into new conferences. Typically, the Israel Export Institute, which I'm chairing the board, the life science board, we had, for so many years, we had a big national booth in Germany for known to be the largest medical conference, the largest medical device conference worldwide. But 3 years ago, as a government, we have decided also to move into the HIMSS in the United States, which is probably the largest digital health conference. And you can see here the chief scientist, the commercial attaché from New York, all of us attending that, and with the national booth, having about 30 or 40 companies, startup companies out of Israel, attending in the main booth and being able to do business with the global providers, the community of that. So Israel is known to be probably the second largest hub of innovation in digital health, with over 500 startup companies only focusing on digital health. So for Israel and globally, it's quite a tremendous amount of companies. You can see this slide of the various verticals: decision support, remote monitoring, diagnostic, clinical workflow, and others, all of which are of Israel, some of which have raised a lot of money and now are active globally. To give you a taste of some of those companies, and the best way I'd like to do it is also to give some faces and recognition to some of my friends and colleagues, such as Ziv Ofek, who was the guy that actually sold the company, DB Motion, for $235 million to Allscripts. But he did not stop with it. Then he actually moved to build another company called MD Clone, which is a synthetic data. All of us are worried about privacy, and MD Clone is the next ventures of Ziv Ofek for synthetic data and making sure that the privacy is kept, and working with many providers in Israel. I can indicate Duality and a few other companies that have started that you can see and get a taste, but I would like not to dive into each and every company, but rather give you a notion of what we have. This is Dr. Akira Radinski, another serial entrepreneur out of Israel. She was, at the age of 26 or 28, she actually sold her first company to eBay, and later on moved from the high tech into medical, into healthcare, and came about with diagnostic robotics to change the emergency room triage and the process, to improve the process, and also K-Health, which has raised, I think, like the last round of $50 million, and basically came up with a symptoms checks by the physician. So getting an AI solution to be shared between patients who are bothered by some symptoms, and basically look into a solution, a rapid solution of what potentially this might be related to. So it's a very interesting and becoming a global company, doing very well. Actually, a company from Sanara Ventures, which we have invested some 3 years ago, a company called TaylorMed, which is doing a software only for the US market, and basically looking to optimize the out-of-pocket expenses for cancer patients in the United States. So you guys in India, probably it may less be relevant to some extent, because it's very much tailored to the US market. Nonetheless, it could be a platform to optimize what in the US, basically cancer patients are paying 20% at least as out-of-pocket, and some of which cannot afford to pay. Nonetheless, the providers, the hospitals do provide the services, and eventually are losing on a yearly basis like $5 billion every year, because eventually they cannot collect the money from the patients themselves. So this is a software solution that basically offsetting and looking for alternative solutions by insurance, by pharma company support plans, and others. This is a colleague and a friend from the telemedicine and remote monitoring, a company of Jonathan, who has built a company which is called Healthy.io. So basically the way they present their solution for urine tests, they say, we are sparing you guys from doing the walk of shame. Everybody on the planet is taking the urine test and getting a plastic bottle, and then you go back to the physician or you go back to the nurse and you give them this plastic bottle. So they came up with that and say, why can't we do it at home? And actually they came up with a solution that is now you can buy it in London, not just in Israel and everywhere else. And you can do that urine test at home with your cell phone. And they were actually the very first company to do so and get an FDA approval and the smartphone as a diagnostic tool. So this was a precedent that we were very proud of. TytoCare, which is a telemedicine company for remote diagnostic, and another company, which is our company, My Home Doc. My Home Doc is another company that we have invested in out of Sanara Ventures, and I'm the active chairman of My Home Doc. It's a smartphone, which basically a device with 4 sensors, a stethoscope, an otoscope, a pulse oximeter, and a thermometer that allows every family or nurses and physician to do 9 parameters, 9 examinations, leveraging your smartphone. Very cost-effective solutions, because you still have a lot of ingredients, so-called, a lot of digital components within the smartphone that could be actually utilizing and saving the cost, the bill of material of the device. And as such, it's a very, the idea, the concept of integrating that into the smartphone, it's a very cost-effective solution. From the Israeli army, which you might have heard about, my friend Avi came up with the ability to see, as they said, for reconnaissance, for intelligence purposes. They were able to see a lot of maps from above, from the space sometimes, and analyze it to a very small, kind of scrutinizing the information. They have been taken into pathology. And this is another way for us to generate entrepreneurs from their expertise in the Israeli army, moving into the entrepreneurship and into digital health with Nuclei and IBEX. Another company for microbiome, which is doing quite well, collaboration with Johnson & Johnson is a company called Day 2, which is basically the computational element of our microbiome and basically looking into pre-diagnostic of potentially those who may become diabetic patients. This is maybe 1 or 2 more companies before I dive into a little bit different aspects of digital health. A friend and a colleague of mine named Dr. Gidi Stein, who has actually been seeing on a real-time a child, which was 9 years old child that actually died and passed away from getting the wrong prescription. And then he decided this cannot last. And he came up with a company called MedAware that's using AI for avoiding prescriptions decisions by error. And this is a company that we've been implementing in so many hospitals in Israel. And now obviously they're doing commercial sales in the global market. So more and more companies, radiology AI, Viz for stroke, for analytics of stroke, iMedis, which is another company out of Sanara, such as AA-Doc, which is another AI company for image analytics, Zebra Medical, and others, all of which providing solutions and platform for basically, like iMedis is doing AI for undetected early onset of cancer and other organs. What I'm saying is basically that we as community, let it be in India, let it be in Israel, let it be in the States, we need to build more and more collaboration. This is redundant, everybody's saying it, but we need to improve that. And Amit was referring to that, and Sagi was referring to that. If you remember the movie, The Fields of Dreams, if we build it, they will come. The know-how, the knowledge sharing. And I would like, with your permission, just 2 more minutes about knowledge sharing and things that I was involved, as was indicated by Amit and Ajin as well, as helping the World Bank. And I was defined to some extent even to be the father of this Tech Emerge program. I came up to India a few times. I met Mr. Reddy and I met a few others, the owners of the hospitals of Apollo, Max, SRL, and Fortis, and the others. And basically we brought about with a platform on behalf of the World Bank to basically validate new technologies that were invented in New Zealand, in Spain, in Israel, in Norway, in the United States. And they were validated and tested. And we as the World Bank, we actually subsidize those pilot and validation process and actually helping those to accelerate the commercialization of those technologies. Later on, we actually took it to Brazil and now to Africa. So it's becoming more and more a global platform for open innovation, for knowledge sharing between companies. And the last one that I'd like to share with you is out of Norway. Imagine there's a new technology or a new process in Oslo University Hospital, which basically cuts the diagnostic process of breast cancer from 12 weeks to 1 week. Now, once this was implemented with a new technology and a new process, What they do in Norway is using an Induct, a web-based platform that basically this one hospital is now sharing 81 other hospitals across Norway with how to go about it. So all of us, which are on the entrepreneurship side, we do invent the wheel. Every now and then we have this amazing breakthrough and amazing technology, and we can do that. What I'm saying is vice versa. There's no need to invent the wheel over and over again. There's a true need to do knowledge sharing between us. There's so much knowledge about commercialization, about science, about processes that could be utilized from one geography to another by building up those platforms such as the Induct, but as well as others. And imagine if all of those hospitals would have shared in cancer diagnostic or in therapeutics or in whatever, and definitely in corona cases and others, the knowledge that we share, aside from obviously looking for more disruptive technologies, but this is another amazing effort that I'm pushing also in the Israeli government and in some other places. So this is Shimon Peres at the end. He said, in Israel, for me, dreaming is simply being pragmatic. So I was hoping that I was pragmatic and being able to give you some of those examples, and hopefully we can be pragmatic, and do more and more businesses together between Israel and India. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Assaf, thank you. And this was fascinating. Before I invite the entrepreneurs for the session, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Assaf, one of the things which I think the companies in Israel have done really well is globally commercialize their technology, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I think, we really need to figure out how to do better in India. What would be some of the things of use from you on how, what learnings you can take for our startups here?
I would say three things. One, don't fall in love with the technology. Fall in love with the solution that you can monetize. I've been seeing so many entrepreneurs that they fall in love with the technology. A technology is a technology, but do feel okay if you, what we define as zigzag, and you look for other applications, for other use cases. In so many cases, entrepreneurs insist on coming up with that specific technology to maybe a different use case, and the real solution, which then again could be utilized, is something else, and you need to listen. And this is my second recommendation. Listen, listen, listen. This is something that entrepreneurs, sometimes they have a lot of confidence and quite confident about whatever they do, about their personality and their abilities. Nonetheless, listen very carefully to the feedbacks from the market in order to come up with a product market fit. It has to be a product market fit. If you don't listen to the market feedbacks, you may not be able to come up with a solution that you can eventually sell. So there's no point of inventing a technology which is not sellable. And thirdly, I would say conduct a dual due diligence. So many of us, and as an investor, I'm saying it, as entrepreneurs and investors, that this is less on the implementation side. Listen very carefully and ask questions. Ask your customer questions. Ask your potential investors who have they've been working with, and what's their track record, and what's their vision of working between people. So many of those entrepreneurs sometimes are getting money and investment just from whoever, and not necessarily matching between their vision and the investor's vision, and eventually it may kind of damage the relationship and the potential to commercialize. So I would say do a dual due diligence. It's always a dual process. Listen very carefully, and don't fall in love with the technology, but do fall in love with a solution that is could be monetized.
Amazing. One more question, Assaf. From a point of view of, you've been to India, you've been part of Tech Emerge, you've seen the innovation take place.
Yeah.
In your mind, what could be the 2 or 3 top areas of opportunity in India today?
Well, there are probably 2 points that I'd like to raise, and maybe, as far as I understood, and I may be mistaken, but one of the things that I've realized that in India, the price point is the most crucial part, the price point. And I've been seeing solutions which may be, if you're looking into the price, and this actually has an implications on the business model. We need to come up with flexible business models in order to allow matching the price point that is, that is able in India. In so many cases, if we are not creative enough about, revenue share or potentially software as a service model or whatever, in so many cases, you cannot eventually meet the market. And I'm talking not necessarily from within the Indian market, but rather from the outside. If we want to come and basically sell something for $100 or $200, and this is way too much, and this is upon us and upon you guys, is to find flexible mechanism and flexible enough business model to match that price point. Because eventually, for my expertise, and this is a crucial point in India, and everything is relying on the price point. It should not be this way if you can come up and match that with a flexible mechanism and a flexible business model.
Thank you, Assaf. With this, I'd like to invite Gur Ilani, the CEO and co-founder of GG Cubed from Israel. And all I want to say is, at this time, at least my personal experience has been that the space that Gur is in has seen an explosion with respect to how people are really requiring services around wellness, well-being, mindfulness, self-care, and some of these other areas. I have seen that even some of the Indian startups have exploded with respect to global signups from their platforms and apps. And Gur, I think it's a very timely conversation that we're having with you. Would love for you to share in 5 to 7 minutes, what your company is about, and then maybe I'll ask you a few questions as we go along.
Sure. Thank you, and it's nice being here. So let me just share my screen. We can jump into that. Can you see? Yeah. So my name is Gur Ilani, and I'm co-founder of Gigitude. We're a Tel-Aviv-based company. I co-founded Gigitude with my friend for 20 years, Professor Guy Doron. We actually known one another from while studying in Melbourne, in Australia. And I didn't know, Guy already knew at that time that he was going to get into mental health because he was studying his PhD in psychology, but I was really far from that. I was doing actually development and web development at that time, and I didn't know that I will get into this field. So to go really quickly, I'll tell you a bit about the story of a startup. I was, like I said, working on web development and later on reach web applications, and after that mobile applications. And as you know, entrepreneurs and coders, and developers, this is a very stressful work profession. And I used to work, the projects that I'm working on became more and more stressful. And at some point, one day, I felt like I couldn't work on the project that I was working on anymore. And I just had to tell my project manager, look, I have this situation, like I can't work, I'm too stressed, like I can't focus. I actually had some skin condition that I had, and I had to stop the project that was going towards a deadline, a strict deadline. And after that, I sat with the guy, my friend, and I asked him what happened. Like, I have all these, Amit, you mentioned the self-care. I had all these self-care routines that I knew that I could use. For example, I could go to the beach and reduce my stress levels, or I could go to the pub with my brother and watch some football and reduce my stress levels. Everyone's got their stress-reducing routines, but that didn't work at that time. And Guy told me, basically, as long as you think the way you think, you're not going to be able at this point at some point, the self-care routines don't work if you don't change the way you think. And if you look at this slide right now, I can show how CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the practice that Guy is researching and teaching also at IDC Herzelia, how CBT sees the way we see and interpret the world. Basically, we have interpretations to situations around us, and we have thoughts that reflect that. For example, this person on the beach thinks that his body is weak, or this woman or someone else thinks that he can't bear the uncertainty. And these thoughts basically affect everything. And this affects our mental health and also life situations and also ultimately our health as well. I want to jump quickly into the situation at the moment because we know that it's very relevant to mental health and health in general. And I wanted to say, like, we got into mental health about 5 years ago and formed a company about 2 years ago. But who could know that, this, the digital health and mental health is going to explode the way it did? Who knew it needed disruption? So my answer is that everybody, everybody went to hospitals and saw that they're not efficient, and everybody knew that some services are not as good as they could, like Assaf showed earlier about different solutions like the Norwegian startup and stuff like that. But when we went about doing something about it, we always had all these obstacles. How could you change something that's going on like that for such a long time? If you think about the different industries that being disrupted at the moment, it's the education. Like my daughter, for example, at school, the whole way she studies has changed completely, like in 100%. So jumping into the coronavirus situation, if we look at the US population, we see that only 3% are infected, but the actual impact on the population is much, much higher. A recent survey shows that 16% are highly distressed, and that means that they need clinical solutions. And all in all, around 54% are distressed. Distress means that I can't focus, that I can't sleep, that I check the news all the time, that I have problems, going about my daily routines or just functioning in the community. And we actually obviously didn't develop our product for coronavirus world, but when we started working on the platform, we knew a few things. Like we looked at things that were at the time, available in terms of apps, mobile devices, mobile platforms. And we, like, how many day jobs can you have? I have one day job, and I have a further, 2 to 3 day jobs that I work for, like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Like, how many more day jobs can you have? And when we looked at mental health solutions about 3, 4, 5 years ago, we saw that a lot of them required people to have another day job, to start logging their thoughts or sharing their situation, their thoughts, their feelings with the system, and logging, and this, we thought that this is not going to work. Like we have to do something that will work, even if it's used for 3 to 4 minutes every day. And then we started coming up with different solutions and different ideas of how to address that, how we can make something that is going to change. If I go back one slide, these what we call maladaptive inner monologue or maladaptive thinking methods or thinking patterns into adaptive and helpful and healthy thinking patterns. So that's what we're using the technology for. Basically, every person has a different array of what we call psychological challenges. So I can have, for example, a sleep problem, or Esther, the woman in this example, she can have a sleep problem. But this sleep problem is actually related to health worries that she has. Maybe she's got some OCD also, some obsessive thinking. And maybe that is also related to self-esteem, low self-esteem that she has. So what we're doing, with our backend, with our platform is we're actually sampling a lot of responses to that the user makes, and we use these responses to map the user's mental health map, and to know what relates to what, and what different mechanisms drive the user's, the person's experience of the world, thinking habits, and ultimately their mental health. And another thing that we're doing is we are constantly researching our platform and making sure that every solution that we come up with is research, and we already are one of the world's most researched mental health, personal mental health platforms with 7 published papers. That is something Professor Guy Doron is in charge of, and is really important to us in this regard. A bit about our market differentiation. So like I said, it's 3 to 4 minutes a day. We're testing it. It's effective and research proven. It's personalized, like I showed before. And there's another important factor that is discrete. We're not using any user accounts. So a user does not share with us their personal details or anything. We're just using anonymous data to personalize the experience. And the last thing, that it's ready. It's available right now. It's not something that's going to be ready in like 5 years or something like that. Do I have a bit more time, Amit? Okay, I'll just continue. So
just a couple of minutes, Gur. If you can wrap up in a one or 2 minutes, please.
Sure. Yeah. So just looking at the similar, paths of similar companies that are a bit older than ours. We were founded in 2019. Let's look at Talkspace. They were founded in 2012. I'm just showing this for entrepreneurs that would like to see how these platforms eventually evolve, because we all have this pressure to build right now and to give all these to create these amazing products in like 1 month. Is it really possible to do it? So when we look at similar companies, they were built in about they reached the valuation that we're trying to reach, $1 billion in 8 years. So the first 4 years of Talkspace, for example, I don't know if you're aware, this is a telehealth service for mental health. It took them about 4 years to reach 100 million valuation, in which we were market exploration. And then they did the market optimization that brought them eventually to this desired valuation. Calm, which is a meditation and a mindfulness app, took the same, about the same amount of time to reach this. So when you start building something, I think it's very important to keep in mind that it takes time. Although we always, we're looking around us and seeing all these things happening at a fast pace. Eventually, when you look at the actual solutions that reach a high valuation, it actually takes time, and it takes time to explore the market and then to optimize it. So it's good to look at these models and learn from them. And we're trying to also follow a similar model and make it a bit shorter due to the opportunities that these companies did not actually enjoy when they were founded. So we're actually doing a lot of market exploration and product innovation at this stage. And then the next stage is developing more markets like the pharma, localization, workplace mental health, healthcare insurance, and such. So this is basically how we're planning to go. Yeah, so this is just something from one of our users. In less than a week, it helped me break through things I never thought I could in my life. And this is just a final slide to show how our vision sees the world after basically a lot of people are using our products. And people have what we call helpful thinking or healthy thinking habits. and they think that instead of this this quick access to negative thinking and unhelpful thinking, they have much better access to helpful thinking. Yeah, that's about it, and I'd be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Gur. This is fascinating. I have one question that has come from the audience. Let me pose that first. Somebody's asking, how do you fight the stigma attached to mental health? And in India, especially, there is this, of course, as it is across the world, but this is a consideration for India.
Yes, so our service is private. You use it on a personal device. So obviously people, sometimes people do peek into other people's mobile phones, but actually for that, we also have a small sort of solution. We don't, actually show the problem or the psychological problem on the icon or on the name of the app. So even if someone peeked into your mobile phone, they don't see that you're suffering from OCD or something like that. But basically, yes, I think we're trying to provide a solution. We know that there is a stigma, and of course, this is related to some markets and some, all of the markets, of course. But I think, if you have a problem and you're seeking a solution to that problem, and you're willing to admit that you have a problem, then you will accept that you need a solution for that problem. And of course, some mindfulness apps and stuff like that try to package this problem in a nicer way, and we're doing it. We have a different apps, like one app that is more towards self-care and self-esteem and sort of positive things. And one app is more for the clinical challenges. Yeah, so I hope I answered.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a question for Assaf, and maybe Gur, if you can answer. But Assaf, from an investor's perspective, the target market for this, of course, could be the B2C or B2B2C, right? Where you have a lot of corporates who are signing up for EAP and other things, right? In your view, how should, companies which are offering this look at this? And how would you measure the metric of valuation? Especially a lot of it could be tech driven in this, right?
Yeah, so it's complicated. Different markets have different business models, like in the US market versus the Indian market. If we take, for example, Livongo as a disease management, not necessarily mental health, obviously, but rather diabetics and others, started with something that was quite unique. They were able to approach the employers in the United States. And as opposed to those other companies for disease management for diabetic that were not able to monetize their solution, and so many, I think dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of those, came up with solutions that eventually were not scalable and were not being able to monetize. Livongo was able to approach the employers and to offer those programs basically, and make sure there's a return on investment on the side of the employer. So in every model, whether it's a B2C or a B2B, and eventually a B2C to the consumer, there has to be a sustainable business model that the return on investment is quite clear. So in that search of the entrepreneurs, and as Gur has mentioned, and you have to find something which will be sustainable for a long period of time, and not just, so many of those apps, we've been seeing downloads of, so many other people's, but the sustainability and the stickiness after 3 months is no longer there. So you cannot survive, you cannot hire people, you cannot grow. So it's not just a matter of how many downloads of various apps, it's a matter of sustainability and the right business model. And whether it's a B2B, B2C, there has to be at the end a clear return on investment, which either the payers, the providers, the employers, or eventually even the consumer, if it's a B2C, they have to be sustainable.
Okay. Thank you, Assaf. One more question very quickly, Gur. There's a question on data privacy, and especially since you have a lot of data of user behavior, and this question must be asked to you many, many times. But what safeguards and what guidance would you have, on some of these things?
Yeah, so like I said in the presentation, what we chose to do is to basically put a blindfold on our eyes and not see a lot of the information that that the user is asked to share in some other services. What we're doing is separating completely the user's responses and the user's activity within on the platform with the user's device. So all the data that we collect is completely anonymous. And we think this is actually a solution that helps us. It does limit us, but not enough to provide us. We still have enough information that helps us personalize, and that's the most important thing. So we need to know, like, if for example, as a developer of a platform, you ask him for a user to sign up for something, do you actually need that sign up? Do you have it, or do you just ask for it so you have their email to spam them? And that's something that's very relevant to users also, in especially in mental health. Why do you take this information? And just a little anecdote on that. Every little detail that we ask, every little screen that we ask is something that we have to then check in a test, in A/B testing, to see whether this impacts the amount of sign-ups or retention. And
Gur, are you there? Hello?
I think we lost him, Amit.
We'll just wait for 10 seconds.
fashion. Yeah. But apparently this single page, this single screen caused a lot of people to quit the app. So right. This is something that then, we had to decide to make it optional. And that is something that is such a small detail can make a lot of people decide that that's not for them. And we need to be very sensitive about these things.
Super. Thank you, Gur. This was fascinating, and wishing you all the best as you get along in your journey, and hoping to see you at one point in India as well. With that, I'd like to move to Rajneesh. Rajneesh has joined us from India. He runs a very successful and a fairly large chain of clinics, very specialized clinics. I will not steal his thunder, but I'll ask Rajneesh to introduce himself, and then maybe talk about his business and his growth. Rajneesh, over to you.
Thanks, Tai. Thanks, Naveen, Saiki, and Amit. In the next 5-7 minutes, I'll be speaking on the technologies that will shape the health tech and medtech space in the next 5 years, and how we are basically leveraging these in our startup. So we are the world's first chain of vertigo, dizziness, and balance disorder clinics. Our vision is to democratize and super specialty healthcare across geographies. And our vision and massive transformative purpose, as we say, is to treat 100 million patients in the next 10 years. Vertigo, dizziness, and balance disorders affects more than 15% of the population, much more than diabetes or heart disease. There are more than 180 million people in India who suffer from these disorders. And the reason for this, that it is much more than diabetes or cardiac diseases, because there are more than 40 diseases of the inner ear and the brain, which can cause these similar symptoms. And we diagnose and treat these diseases. In the last 10 years, technologies are developed in America and in Europe in this domain. And there are super specialty centers in centers like Johns Hopkins, Harvard Medical School, and others. So this is basically Boston Children's Hospital, which is associated with the Harvard Medical School. And you have these kind of vestibular diagnostic labs that are there. But there, even in the developed world, there are not too many of these because they are quite expensive. So while you have a large number of patients, the treatment centers and diagnosis centers are few. We have basically developed all these diagnostic equipment on first principle basis. We've applied for 6 patents. We have already been granted 3 patents, and all our products are CE certified. So the universe of the balance disorder, the diseases is already a $150 billion market just in the US. And we are dealing with this whole area of patients, both in terms of diagnosis and treatment. So we have a unique clinic revenue share model. So as I was saying, we need new models and new business models to take the healthcare forward. So we believe we have a unique model where basically the diagnostic tests happen in large centers and hospitals across India on our equipment. Data comes on the cloud. And at the back end, we have AI, machine learning, and computer vision with our super specialist doctors to be able to provide diagnosis and prescription to the local doctor. So we have more than 125 centers across India, including all the top hospitals. We have clinics in Cyprus, Bangladesh, and we are now going global. We leverage multiple technologies, disruptive and exponential technologies, to provide the solution that is required. And to the point that Assaf was saying, we are not wedded to a technology. We are not a 3D printing technology company or a AI company. We are a solutions company, and we are basically integrating and developing whatever technology solution is required to be able to provide the best solution for our patients and for the doctors. All our equipment is 3D printed, and that helps us in rapid prototyping and experimentation. And that is something that is quite dear to us. We use virtual reality for rehabilitation of patients and also as a great tool for doctor education. We use machine learning extensively for providing diagnosis at the back end, and our algorithms and machine learning have made a huge difference in terms of scalability of the product, because we do not require a huge number of doctors to be able to provide scalable solution. Israel is one of the leaders in computer vision or machine vision. We extensively use computer vision. This here, what you see is the torsional movement of the eye or the rotational movement of the eye, which gives a clue on which part of the brain or the inner ear has a problem. And we have developed many of these kind of solutions. So there are only 2 companies in the world which have this unique solution in terms of diagnosing different ailments through torsional movement of the eye. We have developed algorithm-based history-taking module. Our complete history-taking module is interactive and digital, and we are now integrating NLP in this module. Beyond the Fitbits, where basically wearables take information about how many steps, heart rate, and all, those are now becoming cliche. You have therapeutic wearables, which are the next big revolution in healthcare. So we have developed wearables for management of various diseases, including migraine. Our patients extensively use digital therapeutics and apps for lifestyle management, rehabilitation, logging in incidents, etc. So this all integrates on our cloud platform. Adverse drug reactions is the 6th largest cause of death, and over 100,000 deaths a year in US alone. Our algorithms impede the preventable adverse drug reactions, and these algorithms are integrated in our prescription generation module. Diseases like diabetes affect multiple organs, but the healthcare system is designed to respond in silos. We need to build technologies that encourage multidisciplinary approach and integrated approach. Our cloud platform ensures multidisciplinary protocols. Medicine will advance more in the next 10 years than it has done in the last 100 years. What is considered as standard of treatment in 2015 will become obsolete by 2025. There is too much information, and it is beyond the capacity of the human mind. Just as an example, there are more than 7,000 FDA-approved drugs and thousands of interactions that can happen between these drugs. Contraindicated medicines because of various existing diseases. So our clinical decision support system takes into account all these drug interactions, contraindicated medicines, and various parameters like age, gender, etc. in generating the prescriptions. Our algorithms generate rehab protocols which are disease-specific, customized, and progressive. Thus, Neuroequilibrium platform integrates all these cutting-edge disruptive technologies. And to repeat, as Assaf was saying, that we are not in love with any of the technology. We are in love with our solution. And we basically integrate whatever technology is required and develop whatever technology is required. All these technologies have been developed in-house. Again, as Assaf was saying, that we need disruptive business models, scalable business models. So these are exciting times in healthcare where old business models are giving way to new ones and business models that are highly scalable and can impact millions of lives are what is required. And I think that is what we're trying to do. We have no hospitals or doctors. We are a tech platform which integrates all these services to be able to deliver services across geographies and across multiple locations. So I think we need healthcare to move from sickness to wellness, from reactive to preventive and data-driven, holistic and personalized. Thank you.
Rajneesh, thank you so much. This was really fascinating. One of the questions I had for you, Rajneesh, is especially given the last 6-7 months, what I understood, of course, is you have been running a chain of clinics, both shop and shop kind of model, of course, with a lot of data as the backbone. But how have you pivoted this model? Because patients have just, shied away from physical visits, right? We've seen a lot of electives also drop.
Yeah. So I think COVID has speeded the transformation from digital to virtualization across the world. And it has resulted in accelerated adoption of technology like ours. So, as you were saying, Amit, in your opening comments, that the interest in healthcare and medtech has gone through the roof. So one of the most dramatic things that have changed is the regulatory framework. And telehealth, telemedicine was in the gray zone before COVID started. In March this year, Niti Aayog came up with one of the world's most futuristic regulations for telehealth. Now, in terms of our own company, we have also gone from to be much more a virtualized company, and it has accelerated to the pace in our company. We have built modules for online training of our technicians and launching virtual rehabilitation. So we are like, we have also launched a product during COVID, which is like the White Hat Junior for virtual rehabilitation. So I think, although we are already tuned to this kind of a technology disruption, but it has been accelerated in the last few months.
Thank you. Just one more quick question, Rajneesh, and this is more for the benefit of your experience in people looking at this business. One line of monetization, if I can call it, is of course the therapy or the provision of healthcare itself. I think the other way to build value or create value in the business is a lot of the relevance, the data that you have and the analytics that you have is for payers and the life sciences community and for people who can really work on some of these therapy areas. What would be your guidance or advice on how to work through some of this?
So, in the last 6 months, in fact, we have been approached by the top groups in the world in terms of collaborating with us because of the kind of data that we have. So from day one, we have built the technology which is HIPAA compliant, and where we store the personal data on different parts of the server, and the medical data on different parts. So we are compliant in terms of being able to provide anonymized data for any kind of research or improvement. And we ourselves are, have developed protocols which have been now are being recognized across the world, in terms of cutting edge technology for improved protocols for these kind of patients.
Okay. Thank you, Rajneesh. Let me just quickly, we've got about 10, 12 minutes. Unless anybody has any comments from the panel, Assaf, Akbar, we can ask some questions. So Assaf, would you want to comment on any of these? Otherwise, I'll open the questions.
Just in terms of, I think this, one of the reasons that I'm happy about this session is the fact that it's not necessarily addressing COVID-19, but rather presenting a bigger scale of collaboration. Nonetheless, the COVID-19, for instance, under the Export Institute of Israel, we came up with a catalog, a digital catalog, that basically is looking for 70 solutions which are related directly or indirectly to COVID-19, and we've been spreading that. I think Sagi and the other commercial attachés of Israel could distribute it and have done so with various solutions related to COVID-19. But one of the things that bothers me in that atmosphere that we've all been experiencing under the Zoom is how pragmatic we can be, truly pragmatic in terms of maintaining those business relationships going forward. How not just making sure that this is just one Zoom and then there we go, we may potentially see one another in a year or 2 years' time. And this is why, sometimes you need, all you need is one anchor, one champion to lead such processes with Sagi, with the commercial attachés, other commercial attachés, with you guys. And this is, I'm contemplating every time that I'm excited about seeing various solutions and things that I was not even aware of, how to make sure that we keep our dialogue sustainable enough to make sure that we finally have implementations in place and commercialization in place, and specifically in those challenging times with the Zoom meetings and not being able to meet face to face. And this is, I'm referring to you, I mean, to some extent, we can discuss it not necessarily just now, but I'm just wondering how this, the follow-up of doing business together and maintaining a business continuity, we should think probably offline to this conference, how to go about with the amounts of data that you guys have and the options and the opportunities that you guys and we bring together. But we can take it offline.
Absolutely, yes. No, it's a great point, and thank you for raising it. I think we will certainly connect with you. In fact, I was telling Naveen yesterday itself that this is the opening of a dialogue. And to me, we should have more sessions with established companies that could really guide some of the others, and then look at how the exchange could happen. And as one of the questions which has come from several people is, what are the opportunities for Indian companies in Israel? And, investment, market entry, partnership, therapy areas, whatever you can share would be great.
Yeah, I think that it's not, with that I will be a bit kind of more realistic, and it's not that I'm not optimistic, but it's the size of Israel, as indicated before, is 9 million people. So a market within itself is not necessarily a big enough market to address commercialization efforts. Nonetheless, there's a vast capabilities of research and science and validations and data, validations in hospitals that could be made, as long as it is tailor-made to the local community of providers and service providers, healthcare service providers. So I would probably say that those of the startups from India that would like to try and build a go-to-market plan for Israel, realistically, I would say, not trying to stop this attempt, but I would say, do think twice about whether you need to do so when you have the Asian market as a go-to-market instead of the Israeli market, which is very small. So just realizing that. Nonetheless, capital, collaborations, science-related, research-related data, whatever we should be concentrating about, and potentially complementary solutions. One of the things that complementary solutions, adding something to more holistic, eventually take hospitals such as Apollo, Fortis, Max, and eventually if they want to adopt as many solutions as they can, they will not be able to do so if they have 80 pilots per year, 120 pilots per year. Eventually, if we can come up with some kind of complementary solutions together and approach and listen and approach together, maybe two companies, one out of Israel and one out of India, to come up with a collaboration and offer an holistic solution, this could be helpful. But within itself, I would definitely indicate of companies to go to India out of Israel and not necessarily to look for the Israeli big market, because it is a limited market.
If I may, please, I was muted earlier, Assaf. Thank you very much for touching the follow-up point. It's extremely important. We know that business processes all over the world, but not to mention India, take time. People need to digest things, need to understand what they're getting into. If somebody's putting his hand in his pocket and taking out his money, he needs to be sure that this money is going to the right places. So in that term, we're here, as I mentioned earlier, as the economic mission in India, in Mumbai and elsewhere to help you guys. Elsewhere, I mean in Delhi and Bangalore, to help everybody who needs help. We need for us to do the follow-up, to get the Zoom meetings, to keep track, send the emails, the reminders. We'd be more than happy to do so. Our success is a deal between an Israeli and an Indian company. It can be one way as an investor. You can invest in Sanara Capital. You can invest elsewhere in Israel, which would be, we would love to see that, as I mentioned earlier, see much more Indian capital coming to Israel. Potential is great. Companies in Israel are growing. Startups, small startups, in many cases are growing, and the ROI is usually very good, okay? That's one thing. We're gonna have two other sessions. I don't know, Amit, Naveen, if we touched on that, but maybe it's a good time to mention that we'll have two more sessions. One will be a B2B sessions to have Israeli companies presenting to Indian companies and just getting two sides to actually talk as kind of Q&A. And secondly, an investor session where actually Israeli companies will pitch to Indian investors that are looking to invest in healthcare company, in the healthcare sector in Israel. I can relate very easily to what Assaf was mentioning. 9 million people, it's not a market, it's a city. It's 2 towns in India. It's not a market for a proper Indian company, but approach Israeli companies, if you're an Indian company, approach Israeli companies that you find interesting, that you find their technology relevant for India. It can be telemedicine, it can be remote healthcare, diagnostics, pharmaceuticals, it's all there. Israel is very, very strong in the healthcare sector. Try to bring them to India as a strategic investor. It's not all about the capital. The market access, allowing them, reach out to your contacts, helping them establish their business entity in India, which can be, again, a long process that takes a lot of resources, especially from a very lean Israeli startup. It can be 3, 4, 5, 10 people. They don't have the resources to do that. If you're an Indian company and you can allow this help to the Israeli startup, to the Israeli entrepreneurs to come to the Indian market, to join hands with you and to succeed together with them, that'll be great. That'll be wonderful for both sides. You will get the tech, you'll get the know-how, you'll get the innovation. The Israeli company will gain the market, will get the volumes, will get the capacity that India can offer, and Israel cannot and would not be able to offer also in the future. So that's from my end anyway.
No, thank you, Sagi. Assaf, one question which has come up, maybe if you can give a light as an investor, is the whole scope for wearables and IoT. How do you look at that market and the future of that?
On wearables?
Yes.
Well, there was a point of time that everybody thought that they should have a bracelet and quantifying yourself became so very popular. This within itself, if we are looking into wellness and prevention, which are there, it's a huge market. I think there's a great opportunity for that. For instance, us as a VC that works under Phillips and Teva, we are not investing, for instance, in wellness application. We're looking for a regulatory pathway for the products that we are facing with, but this is not to say that this is not a huge market within itself. So wearables, eventually there will be an integration. There will be, various data and sources of data. Let it be wearables, let it be remote diagnostic, without touching the patients. We've been seeing some amazing technologies out of Israel, one of which, for instance, can see the heart pulse from 400 meters, just sensing that with a kind of an add-on to the smartphone, which you think this is science fiction, So I'm not sure that necessarily just wearables. I'm saying eventually the data is the key component. Let it be aggregated by wearables or let it be aggregated by remote diagnostic and not necessarily wearables. I think the data and the ability to come up with a true, a true application that justifies it, and not just say we can aggregate so much data, let it be for drug delivery, let it be for whatever. The data is an with endless opportunities, and as much as could it be aggregated through wearables or through, I've been seeing a barcode on your neck from a Boston-based company that has a barcode on your neck and aggregate data from that. You can call it wearable or not. So the sources themselves are not as important. I think eventually the application and the usage of data to proper use case would be crucial for any solution, any company.
Thank you, Assaf. Naveen, I have a suggestion. I know we are out of time now. We are through the hour. There are lots of questions, and if it's possible, we should probably circulate the questions amongst the panelists and maybe get the responses back to the group that has asked it, so that, I don't think we'll be able to address. There are some great questions out there. And if it's okay with you, Gur, Assaf, and Sagi and Rajneesh, maybe we can just take those questions and get those answers back to Naveen. So, yeah.
And then we'll be happy to circulate it to all the participants and folks who have registered.
But look, I think with this, to me, I'd like to close this particular day. I think it's been fantastic. I mean, I've learned a lot, and Assaf, I've learned a lot about some of the things, the fantastic work, you've been talking about happening in Israel. And I think that more than just the capital or the market, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to share knowledge and then build certain things together. There will always be a price consideration in India, but India will always be a huge market. And some of the technology advancements that are there in Israel, I think could be clearly leveraged by people who have access to marketplaces here. So we should look at a format, maybe where we pick up a few themes which are very relevant on both sides, and maybe curate a smaller group where we could do some knowledge exchange and maybe partnerships between certain companies that we could get together, and that could be a meaningful way forward. If that's okay.
More than happy to do so. Yeah.
Super.
Beautiful.
Naveen, over to you
for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you.
So
Naveen, over to you to close this. Yeah.
Thank you all. This is great. I think my team is just typing all the email addresses and contacts of the panelists today. So please make a note of that. A lot of you have been asking us, how do we get connected to a specific, company or a specific sector in Israel? So what Sagi and I will do post the event is we will try and see if we can get one designated person from each other's office who will be a point of contact for, anything to do with Israel. So you can send us the questions and we will have it sent to Israel and get you answers back. I know people have been asking things like if they can get an in vitro specialist and stuff like that. A lot of questions are coming my way right now, even as we speak. So we will kind of declare to you who these two people are and give you their email addresses. Feel free and to kind of write to us directly. And Sagi, from your end also, we will give you an Indian email address, one of my colleagues in Thai, so that your people from Israel can write to us and we'll fetch answers from the Thai community over here. So thanks again, everybody. This was a great session. As I said, just the beginning. The whole idea is to develop a strategic partnership and bring the startup to startup connect between the two countries. I think we are now in a zone where we need more business. I think the Gyan and the lecturing has happened over the last 6 months through all these webinars. So we'll be moving this to more business-oriented kind of a platform next. Having said that, and thank you all, Assaf, Sagi, Gur, Rajneesh, of course, Amit, thanks a ton. And we look forward to.
Thank you very much, guys.
Kevin.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to have you all. Thank you.
Thank you.